Hello and welcome to Badger Talk 33 After Show, for which I forget the title and I remembered it when I had my window open, but you know. Berkeley faces lawsuit relevant to our interests, and big students do cry. So I picked these two stories. They're not really related, but the titles kind of make them related. The first one, the lawsuit is conservatives, but it's relevant to us based on how men's issues speakers are treated on university campuses. So Jonathan Stemple here has written about this lawsuit. The lawsuit alleges bias against conservative speakers. And that bias is, and I didn't realize this, but we're going to get every comment that gets posted is going to pop up on the screen. So I'm going to have to widen this a little so I can X out of those. Good grief. I guess that's the thing you got to deal with live articles. And since we're dealing with that, I'm going to move the window here. And we'll just move this window over to the left a little bit. So the text is half hidden behind Allison and me, but as I scroll up you'll be able to see it. So this is a Reuters article. Federal judge rejected the University of California at Berkeley's bid to dismiss a lawsuit claiming it discriminated against conservative speakers like Ann Coulter by imposing unreasonable restrictions and fees on their appearances. In a decision late Wednesday, U.S. District Judge Maxine Chesney in San Francisco said two conservative groups could pursue claims that the school applied its policy for handling major events and an earlier policy for high-profile speakers in a manner that unfairly suppressed conservative speech. Voice for Men open right now. And OBS reconnected. Yay! Okay, so Berkeley College Republicans and the Young America's Foundation, a Tennessee group, had sued after the university canceled Coulter's scheduled speech last April 27th, citing security concerns. Janet Napolitano, president of the University of California, was also named as a defendant. UC Berkeley is known as the birthplace of student-led free speech movement of the 1960s. Like other schools, it has tried to welcome different groups, different views, without jeopardizing safety or its educational mission. The major events policy was adopted in July and gave school officials discretion to take various steps to ensure security. Chesney said, the plaintiffs may pursue an equal protection claim over a security fee charged for an appearance by conservative commentator Ben Shapiro that was well above a fee at the same venue for Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, part of the court's liberal bloc. In a statement on Thursday, UC Berkeley said it was pleased with Chesney's core ruling upholding the major events policy and denied having previously had a secret policy for high-profile speakers. It also called the roughly $9,000 fee charged for the Shapiro appearance lawful and appropriate. Harmeet Dillon, a lawyer for the plaintiffs, also welcomed the decision. It is good news that the case is going forward, Dillon said in a telephone interview on Thursday. The First Amendment is a core constitutional principle, and every government policy that restricts, censors, or bars otherwise legal speech is unconstitutional. The case is Young America's Foundation et al. Versus Napolitano et al., U.S. District Court, Northern District of California, number 17-02255. So the upshot of this is that the court said that yes, they can sue for exorbitant security fees and cancellation of conservative speakers. Whoever's listening to the broadcast, listening to the broadcast can't hear us right now. Let's talk about them, but it's back on. So in any case, this is basically going to give us leverage as a movement, some leverage as a movement anyway, to fight those exorbitant fees. But before I go on to the other article, did anybody have any thoughts on this one? Everybody's kind of muted.
Well, it seems that there's a trend with these free speech lawsuits, even with the recent Count Dankula one. It is something that needs to happen, and otherwise, there's no protection for fringe groups, even if.
Yeah, it does. Without some sort of without some sort of protection, it ends up putting fringe groups in a position of not being able to speak at all.
I think today I listened to a Janice Fiamengo interview that was right after protesters pulled the fire alarm on her. It was, from 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And the feminists there, because of course there were two feminists on the panel, argued that, you're entitled to your free speech, but you're not entitled to a platform. And yeah, so maybe a couple of lawsuits like this would have protection against this kind of rhetoric.
Yeah, definitely, and it's definitely important that you got to see if a public venue like a university, which does receive federal funding, if they are entitled to provide a platform for speakers. They can't very well turn around and say, but we're going to censor the opposing viewpoint. And it's one thing, if they came along and said, well, these people are advocating something that is illegal, or these people are advocating violence, and they could prove that, that would give them some leverage to say, yeah, we have the right to deny these people a platform, because it would be irresponsible for us to condone and support that. But they're not. They don't have that. They just have people advocating a political perspective that other people don't like. The answer to that isn't silence. It's counter arguments. Like, I would love to see the questions that feminists would get up and ask Ann Coulter. I'm sure they have plenty, but none of them ever got the chance because her venue was canceled.
Was that recently, or?
That's the one that's being sued over. That would have been this past winter. Her not her venue. Her speech was canceled. Basically they used a bunch of restrictions. They issued a bunch of restrictions. They made a bunch of demands. She accommodated everything they asked for. They levied fees for security and everything, and she accommodated that as well. And then they turned around and said, well, you still can't come. We don't want you here. So even after everything, they canceled it. And that's when the lawsuit, and it wasn't even her filing the lawsuit. It was the students that brought her. Brought her to the university to speak. It was
Who are you talking about?
The two groups. Ann Coulter. Yeah, the Berkeley College Republicans and the Young America's Foundation sued. They worked together. Her speech was a year ago, April 27th. And they canceled it, citing security concerns. So, but that is because these guys are all snowflakes. These colleges, the students that made the threats, I'm certain, were snowflakes. This is the other thing. Here we have a college that is responding to egregious behavior by apparently students on their own campus, by punishing the targets of the egregious behavior. And nobody is pointing out that by rewarding this behavior, by canceling these speeches that they're canceling, they're encouraging future students to do the same thing. And we're going to threaten violent protests, so you won't have these speakers we disagree with. We didn't come here to learn. It's about creating a home here.
It's the heckler's veto, almost.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like, would they, if their students threaten to start shooting up heroin on campus, would they respond by punishing the cops? You know, it's stupid. Sorry, I'm yawning at you guys. It's that time of the year. It's the time when my asthma kicks it up a notch. So I'm going to move on to the second story. So the first story, I finished the first story, and we might have a little more discussion about the first story in light of the second story. The second story is Cry Closet installed for finals at University of Utah. This one just blew my mind. This is actually somebody's art project, but it's still funny. As finals week approaches... Dang it. Sorry. As finals week approaches and students try to learn a semester's worth of information in a few days... Now, why would they have to do that? Would it be because they're busy protesting and partying the rest of the year and they didn't bother studying? It's likely many will have the inclination to weep. But with campus libraries teeming with students, it can be tricky to locate a private space to shed a tear. A student at the University of Utah has... I'm going to end up getting... Yeah, now it says it's working fine. I wonder what the hell was wrong with it. Okay, so now it says this...
on and off again?
Yeah, it's basically that's what I just did. So it says the stream health is good now. So we'll go on with the second story. But I'm going to have to fix one thing. It came up with the wrong window. Alright, so second story. We'll go back to the beginning because I barely started this. This is Cry Closet installed for finals at the University of Utah. As finals week approaches and students try to learn a semester's worth of information in a few days, it's likely many will have the inclination to weep. But with campus libraries teeming with students, it can be tricky to locate a private space to shed a tear. A student at the University of Utah, I'm not tired or anything, has invented a solution to the pressure of finals week, which begins at the college today. A library cry closet. So there's a picture here of the rules of the cry closet, and to enlarge this, a safe place, it says, for stressed out students, otherwise known as the cry closet. This space is meant to provide a place for students studying for finals to take a short 10-minute break. Rules of the closet. Knock before entering. Only one person in the closet at a time. Limit your time in the closet to no more than 10 minutes. Turn lights and timer off before leaving. Use hashtag CryCloset UF or UOFU, U of U, if posting on social media. And then at the bottom it says artist Nemo Miller in collaboration with Tony Miller and David Meyer. And there's your rules for the cry closet. Nemo Miller, a senior in the Fine Arts program, installed the closet in Utah's library Sunday. The installation will remain in the library until finals week ends May 2nd, spokeswoman Jana Cunningham said in an interview. Miller was profiled as a human of the U last week. The closet went viral on Twitter after its announcement. Miller was unable for interview as she was studying for finals, but she expressed excitement about the reception to her work on Twitter and provided a statement Wednesday. I am interested in humanity and the inherent complexities of the human condition. In my work, I reflect on my experiences and explore what it means to be human. One aspect of humanity that I am currently exploring is connections and misconnections through communication. It's been interesting to watch the response to this piece about human emotions, and I'm proud to see the power of art in action. The installation itself, called Safe Space for Stressed Out Students, otherwise known as the Cry Closet, has 5 rules, and we read those off. Students are encouraged to use the closet, Cunningham said. You can cry, scream, look at your phone and decompress, and hopefully you come out feeling a little better in this crazy week of finals, Cunningham said. So that's the Cry Closet. See about the comments. See if there's anybody criticizing this. One person, Concern, says, yes, adults give each other words of encouragement and a pat on the back, not set aside specifically designated rooms for crying. Cry rooms are for infants and exist so as not to pester the adults. That's a good one. I don't know, what do you guys think a Cry Closet for? Have any of you, none of you are in school now, are you?
Why can't you just go home?
I work at one.
Oh. You work at one, huh?
I start in August.
Starting college in August?
I graduated.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Did you need a Cry Closet?
No, because when I was that behind on finals and I was having to cry, and cram stuff, it was my own fault.
Yeah.
If you actually stayed on top of your homework and managed your time better, you wouldn't need the Cry Closet.
There you go.
I hope they never come out with a Cry Closet.
I hope they do, so I can shove people in there.
It's funny, though. We've had people spend the last century trying to justify coming out of the closet, and the millennial generation has decided to put them back in.
That's where they belong.
Drag me back into the closet, kicking and screaming.
There you go. So we have these two things. We have the news story about U of Berkeley not being permitted to have the case against them for discriminating against speakers that are not of the popular political outlook. They can't just discriminate against those speakers and have that lawsuit dismissed. And then we have students needing a Cry Closet during finals week because they cannot handle the fact that at the end of the time period for their studies, whether it's quarter or semester, they are expected to have learned the material from their classroom experiences. God forbid.
Working hard or hardly working. That's what my dad would say.
Yeah. It blows my mind. It blows my mind that it is actually, we have a student doing an art project on the topic of other students' fragility, emotional fragility, related to those other students' own shortcomings.
Well, you can get away with anything in the name of art installations, including giant vaginas, so...
Yeah.
Liberal arts school. Fun.
And here we have all these commenters are like, oh, it's good to have a quick cry. It's good to have a quick freak out in the closet. And there's lots of ways to, there's final stress. I'm not going to deny that. But there's lots of ways to cope with that stress.
Yeah, what I would always do is I would...
You first.
Okay, sorry, yeah. I would go home, I would just turn on heavy metal really loud, and then just listen to that while I studied.
Yeah, I actually listened to music when I studied too. And then I would listen to that same music before I went to class.
Yeah, how it is supposed to help with your mental state. That's why I always chewed gum during exams, because I'd always chew gum when I studied.
And it sort of helped you to recall the things that you had studied.
Yep, because I was in a similar mental state. Okay,
There
you
are
were gonna
very
say
few
something, Dragon?
reasons for why I would cry. It either has to be just that bad, like when I was telling that story.
Yeah.
You remember. And the other reason is if I'm having suicidal thoughts that are on the verge. Those are the only reasons why I will cry.
I'll be honest, I probably cry as much as any other girl. I cry when I'm frustrated. I don't cry when my feelings are hurt. But I cry when I'm frustrated.
Same. I'm the same.
And,
I'm the
like,
exact same.
Stifling it is like trying to plug a hole in the wall the size of your fist, but only using your finger to plug the hole. It's just hard to do, you know.
It's impossible almost.
Yeah, and it's like, but I wouldn't need to go into a closet in the library to do it. If I was that frustrated, that's a sign that I would, you know, like if I was in a library studying for finals and I was near tears because of the stress and everything, which I never got test anxiety, so there's also that. But I think I would go outside and take a walk. That would be my cue to maybe walk down to the corner store and get a pop, you know, or you know, walk down to the nearest building and back, and then get a drink at the drinking fountain if I was too broke to go get a pop, and if I was saving money or something, you know. But go into a closet and then cry and then go back and study, I would be a mess after. I'm not in a condition to do anything right after I cry.
Well, yeah, because when you cry, there's just so much release that you kind of just feel weak and weebly after it. So why would you want to cry? You're
Well,
just
yeah.
gonna study harder.
Well, and I'm fighting it so hard that afterwards, it's like I've been through a wrestling match.
Even if we ignore the emotional influence element of it, what's the practicality of this crying closet? I mean, it may give you the privacy during the cry, but once you come out of it, all the
Everybody
people
knows.
will know that you were crying. So
Yeah.
what's the point, really?
Yeah, I know. I'm sitting there
And-
thinking, most people when they're crying, if they don't want to be seen, they're not going to want to come out of there. But if they're going to go to a display like the cry closet, they're looking more for sympathy.
They just
Yeah,
want
I just
attention.
want-
Just ignore it.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Luga.
No, you're fine. Go on ahead.
Okay, and I'm someone who doesn't always have control over when I cry because I'm autistic. So if I'm in a place that's too loud, because I'm really sound sensitive, if I'm in a place that's too loud, sometimes it will just trigger something and I'll just start sobbing. I won't be able to control it.
I
I
dated a
don't
girl like
get
that.
why you would want to cry in public, I guess.
I don't know. I've never really wanted to cry in public. I felt okay crying in public under certain circumstances, like when I was at my brother-in-law's funeral, everybody was crying, so I didn't feel weak crying there. It was a horrible, sad occasion, and we all cried, and that was no big deal. And I don't feel bad crying in the movies when something tragic is portrayed on the screen, because for Pete's sake, that's a human reaction. But when I get frustrated over something and I'm just trying to accomplish a task or have a rational discussion, and for some reason I and the other person are not meeting in the middle but talking past each other, you know, it's embarrassing to cry under those circumstances.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like not being an adult.
Well, you're emotionally manipulating them.
Yeah.
You don't mean to, but you're like, it's a biological thing. It's, oh, I'm female. I'm frustrated. I'm going to cry because that has worked in the past, not necessarily for me, but for my ancestors.
Here, let me release this oxytocin from my eyes to manipulate your receptiveness to my requests.
My
I
mother
think
refuses to believe me on that. And like all she does is cry whenever there's an argument.
Yeah, that's another one. Like, if I get into an argument in person with someone that I'm close to, like, I think in our marriage, in earnest, my husband and I have had maybe 3 arguments that got even the least bit heated. We've had a couple times where we disagreed on things, and he's said his piece and I've said my piece, and then one or the other of us hadn't considered something that the other person brought up, and a mind gets changed. But there's been a couple of times where we've had actual frustrations with each other, and I will tell him under that circumstance, don't pay any attention to the tears. I'm going to walk away and get myself under control, because nobody deserves to be taken seriously with snot on her upper lip. And he'll look at me like, what is wrong with you? And I'll walk away, and we'll finish the discussion, 15 or 20 minutes later, when I have dealt with the ridiculous tendency, and that's it. But there's no closet involved.
Yeah, in truth, this actually kind of worries me, because I think it's a reflection of the fact that we're treating people who are only a little bit younger than me like they're still kids. We're not pushing them towards responsibility, and that's probably why there's such a generational gap between me and most other people around my age.
Yeah.
But just there's nothing wrong. They teach you like it's okay to cry. Well, of course it's okay to cry, but just like anger, there's a time and a place for expressing your feelings in a responsible manner. And I think a cry closet is just kind of encouraging like irresponsible. It's just encouraging emotional unintelligence, basically.
Yeah. Well,
Can we walk them into the closet?
yeah, there you go.
7 minutes in heaven.
Yeah, you put him in there with who was it? Weird Al did a song about that. Stuck in a closet with Vanna White. Put him in there with Vanna White. Is Vanna White still around? She's got to be old by now. He did that song like back in the 80s. So
Yeah, stuck in a closet with Vanna White. Yeah.
Stuck in a closet with Vanna White. But yeah, no, I part of this, the reason that this bothers me is that your primary response, or at least your, maybe not primary response, but your main response, I guess it's the same thing. You're not necessarily your first response, but the response to which you dedicate the most attention and energy when you are stressed should not be the crying. It should be whatever constructive response you can come up with. You have test anxiety, don't wait till the last minute to study.
Yeah,
it's
exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
yeah.
About the emotional unintelligence.
You have study anxiety, don't study alone. Nobody takes a class in a university and they're the only person in that class. My Spanish class, the only time I ever had anxiety about any of the classes I took was when I took foreign languages. So even though I am socially awkward and I don't make friends easily and I don't approach people easily, I bit the bullet and I approached some of the other students in the class to study together, and we did. Was part of the reason I passed the class. And oddly enough, it helped me just seeing that there were other students that actually had a harder time with the class than I did, and that there were students that were nervous and said they were bad at languages, but they were doing better than I was. And on one hand, the students that were having a harder time told me that I wasn't having that hard of a time. And the students that thought they were going to have a hard time and then didn't, helped me to realize that it was largely my own fear that was causing my problems studying foreign languages. And, the studying itself went better, I think, in part because I had other people's experiences with it to look at, in addition to, the assistance of us being in the room together and going over things together and finding each other's mistakes and so on. And I think it helped having studied together. When we took the test, we're all in the same room. I think it helped with recall, because we were in an environment that had the same elements, some of the same elements that were there when we were studying. We had the same other people around us. But
Yeah, it's about taking responsibility for yourself and learning how to cope with your emotions in a way that's best for you. And if you need a good cry, if that's going to be productive for you, that's fine. But crying being but you still need to actually do like what you said. You still need to address the actual problem.
yeah, crying doesn't actually solve anything, unless you're trying to get a speaker kicked off of campus. I guess then it apparently does.
While we're on the subject of school, though, back in the day, I want to say freshman, maybe sophomore year, I want to say I was in world history class, and I would always put my head down and I would just simply listen to the guy, because he did more, he was an ex-Marine, and he did more telling stories and lecturing than he did actual teaching, and that's how he did his teaching, by telling stories.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a lot of visual, so I just put my head down and I listened the entire time. And then when test times came around, I always did the best out of everyone. And this girl with the best black hair, she said, "God, he barely ever pays any attention. He always has his head down." And I just look up, or I just pick my head up, and I look at everybody, and I go, "Yeah, fuck you guys," and I put my head back down.
Having your head down doesn't mean you're not paying attention to the teacher. It just means you're not paying attention to the rest of the classroom.
Yeah, I've had teachers do that to me. I had a teacher be like, we were studying the French Revolution in my history class, and he tried to put me on the spot because he thought I wasn't paying attention because I was looking at my paper and writing something. I wasn't even taking notes, I was just writing something. And then I answered his question perfectly. And he takes me aside after class and he's like, "I'm going to ask you to do something else with your hands, not because obviously it doesn't distract you, but I'm going to ask you to do something else with your hands because it distracts me."
He probably wondered what you were writing.
Yeah, but he and I had a good
Yes, for you.
And it reconnected again. Okay, well, same with my, huh?
Are we live again?
Yep, we're live again. My
Okay.
physics teacher was my chemistry teacher, but my math teachers were like that too. We did hands, especially in geometry. We did a lot of measurements of things in the physical world, and we do calculations based on those measurements and stuff like that. All of my math teachers did stuff like that, and it made a huge difference. And we'd get students that didn't want to pay attention in class anytime they weren't doing those things, anytime we were preparing to be able to do those things. That used to drive them nuts. I was that student that took notes because writing things down helped me remember them. I would take the notes. I wasn't going to go back and study my notes. I just needed to write it down so I could remember it.
Yeah, I never really took notes because taking notes didn't necessarily help me. But
Yep. And the problem I had in school was it was so unbelievably easy, boring, and unimportant that I never had to take notes. So I had to learn that lesson later on in life.
Yeah.
The things that actually mattered.
For me, a lot of it was very easy, but it still wasn't boring. But, well, it might have been. I just didn't. I don't know.
I didn't learn anything in a classroom setting ever. Just ever.
I did.
I'm not even kidding. Like, the dissections were cool, but I would just go home and teach myself because I learned nothing in school.
Yeah.
I would just read the textbook from front to back, did what I needed to do, and then I moved on.
I did.
The worst classes for me were always the ones with participation points, because
Oh my
seriously,
God.
fuck everything about that.
You guys
Yes.
were all the opposite of me. I always engaged into participation, especially in lit classes. But in lit classes, it was just because I would get in verbal fisticuffs with the instructors.
There you
So-
go. That actually really wins you points with lit instructors. They love alternative viewpoints. Me, I didn't. Most of my classes didn't have participation points, and the ones that did, well, like gym class. You have participation as part of your gym class. I lost out on participation points in gym class because I got pneumonia and I couldn't go to school for 3 weeks.
Bullshit!
And then when I came back, then when I came back with a doctor's note that said that I could not participate in gym class because I was actually endangered. Having severe asthma, my doctor didn't want me to go back to school, and I insisted on going back to school. And her compromise was, okay, but you can't participate in gym class, which I was not happy. I actually had happened in the middle of the winter. I actually was like, well, what if I just take it easy in gym class? And she's like, well, what you're in danger of is your pneumonia can easily trigger an asthma attack. On top of that, pneumonia is fluid in the lungs. Your lungs are like half full of mucus right now. If you start coughing too hard, you could choke to death before anybody can get to you that knows what to do. And so I was like, all right, I won't participate in gym class. So I go back, and at the end of the 6 weeks period, I have a C in gym class. Now, I participated in the 3 weeks where I wasn't, where I was not sick, because I was out for the last 3 weeks of one quarter, one quarter, and then sick for the first 3 weeks of the next. She couldn't penalize me for being absent because it was against school policy, but she penalized me for being unable to participate. And then the C was with that lack of participation. She had said I had to dress out, even though I couldn't participate. I had to sit in the auditorium where the gym class was taking place. I could not go to study hall since I couldn't participate in gym class. So I actually had to do everything I could in terms of participating in gym class, except actually get the exercise. And I met all of her requirements, and she still docked me for every day that I was unable to get up and do things. And that was what when my parents actually came in to argue that this was inappropriate and abusive, and they talked to the principal. The fact that she made me do all those things and then docked me for non-participation was what cemented the decision that he was going to overrule the grade that she gave me, and she was going to have to give me the credit for participation, because I did everything she said in terms of participation, and I didn't go to the library, which was air-conditioned. It was the only air-conditioned room available to the students, and I didn't do homework or anything else in the auditorium. I just sat and watched the other kids engage in gym class and everything. And I aced all of her tests. So I got an A in gym class, and she held that against me for the rest of the year. And she was like constantly on me for the rest of the year. thinking that that was a punishment.
What a fucking cunt.
Yeah, well, the dumb thing was, she wasn't on me for rules. She wasn't, giving me detention and accusing me of chewing gum and stuff like that. She was pushing me to not physically slack in gym class. So she pushed me to do the thing I needed to do in order to get better. Once I was past that point of having fluid in my lungs and being in danger of a potentially deadly asthma attack in her class, we had to fight with her over two things. That was one of them. The other one was she refused to allow me to have my inhaler, my emergency inhaler. And my parents had to come in and threaten to sue the school. That if anything happened to me while I was in gym class, that there would be a wrongful death lawsuit. And the first thing the vice principal did was turn to the teacher and say, what do you think she's going to do? Use it to get stoned? And the teacher said, asthma isn't real. It doesn't exist. The inhaler is unnecessary and I won't allow it in my classroom. At which point the vice principal turned to her and said, you are not entitled to decide that. You are not a doctor. It is not your prerogative to label students' diagnosed conditions not real and refuse them access to the medical treatment that their doctor has prescribed. And if you have a problem with this, we can find someone else to teach the girls' gym class. And then she had to let me have my inhaler in the classroom, but she required me to keep it on the floor, on the edge of the gym, away from where I was actually doing my thing. I couldn't have it in my pocket. And,
Failed gym class because I didn't do the fun run, which was the mile run, because they weren't allowing one of the girls, who I didn't even like that much, to have her emergency inhaler on her during the fun run. And she had an asthma attack during the fun run. And I'm the one who helped her back to the teachers so she could get her inhaler.
And they flunked you for helping her.
And they flunked me for helping her.
Oh, jeez,
Yes.
that's insane.
Yes. Administrative relational aggression.
Good grief. And I think with that, we'll close the school snowflake edition of the Honey Badger After Show, because OBS keeps quitting on me. And I think that's a great story of school snowflakery, where the administrators were such snowflakes that they punished a student for helping another student deal with an emergency situation. I mean, fucking hell. That's like, that is epically bad administrative decision making. And with that, I thank you all for listening. And good night, everybody.
Night.
Boy.